This is the Underground Leadership Movement podcast number 6. Back again after quite a while. Got been on a break for a little while. And best news of all, today I brought some friends with me. So this is going to be a good episode. I know it's probably a little confusing. I'll get into it here in a second. But we've got Sean Duffy and Benjamin Martin. Benjamin Martin is just now logging in, so I think he should be in here. So how you doing today, guys?
Oh, doing well, man. Thanks for having us on.
No problem. Ben, you in yet?
Yeah, sorry for the delay. Technology's
Awesome. No,
thing.
I started off the day with a good sized delay myself, so I can't gripe about anything. So how are you guys doing today? It's been a while since I've seen you.
Yeah, no, I can't complain, man. You know, it's I've been blessed to be able to spend more time with my family and things like that. So, you know, it's just getting back from Firehouse Expo. That was pretty time consuming, but fortunately they were able to come with me and share that experience. So
Awesome.
yeah, like I said, man, I can't complain. Support system's good, family's doing good, work front's been good. So you know, just making the best of it daily.
Good deal. You at Firehouse Expo too, Benjamin?
Yeah, I came in and did a pre-con. So it's funny, you know, everything got kind of rescheduled with COVID. So August and September have been crammed full of events. So I can identify with Sean's trying to spend time with the family very much. So I kind of did it in and out. Where normally I'd like to hang out a little bit longer and meet and greet people. But I was able to have some good conversations and, a nice small group dinner with the likes of Brian Brush and guys and like Dennis, much smarter than me. So I learned a long time ago, if you can't sit at the table, then serve water. And that's kind of the role I was in, but it was really neat to be a part of that.
That's awesome. Yeah, one of my favorite quotes is if you're the smartest guy in the room, then you're in the wrong room. I think that's a Viscuso quote, but I truly try to live by that for sure. I don't want to be the smartest person. I want to be surrounded by people that I can learn from, and I think that's exactly what you guys are talking about there. So a little bit of housekeeping right up front. So if you didn't listen to my little Crew First Culture podcast this last time, just an explanation. So we're still be doing that podcast, but it's going to be kind of more of a just a me thing mainly. We're going to kind of start focusing a lot more on this underground leadership movement stuff. And why I'm doing that is because I feel like there is a tremendous need for it. And kind of the premise behind that, if you don't know, is basically it's the fire service, I feel like, is really struggling with developing leaders and developing their officers and all of that. I feel like that it's a problem that we need to really focus on. And that's what the underground leadership movement for me is trying to solve, at least what little part I can do of it. It's me standing up saying that I'm taking responsibility for my development. I am taking responsibility for anything that I need to grow as a leader and as a person, because it's my job, it's my responsibility. So I don't want to leave that in the hands of other people or my department. I am going to be reaching out and doing what I can to better myself. And in that process, I'm going to try to do my best to share what I have with others so that they can do the same. And so that being the case, like the first 5 episodes of the underground leadership movement, I try to find things that I have kind of either learned as an officer, a young officer, through the first few years, or issues that I haven't really learned, or things like that, things that you're just not really taught before you get into that role at most organizations. And so today I want to discuss with these fine gentlemen just the kind of the mindset of leaders teach. And as leaders, we need to be teaching, and that goes across the board. This is not an officer topic. This is across the board. Like I said, firefighters need to be teaching other people, drivers need to be teaching other people, officers need to be teaching as well. And so that being said, just to get that out of the way, and so that I'm not talking any more than I need to, I've got some great guests, and I would say some good friends to have a conversation about this because I feel like it is so important. Sean Duffy is a firefighter, been a firefighter for quite some time. So he's got a good perspective from that perspective, whatever. And Mr. Martin here, is he's still a captain, is that correct? Before I go?
Yeah,
okay.
that's the plan. Stay there for a while.
Okay, I feel you. So him and I will be, kind of coming from their perspective of an officer, a station officer, and kind of just hit it as many directions and perspectives as we can. So that being said, and I go ahead, Benjamin, and kind of, if you want to start out, just kind of give your opinion of, from your perspective of that station officer, do you feel that it is important from that role to be a teacher of others, and kind of give me any insight that you can and want to start out?
Yeah, I think as I'm listening to your question and I was kind of thinking about what we're going to talk about today, it really is a lot like role modeling, right? And we teach folks a ton, whether we mean to or not, because especially when you get in that formal leadership role, like you and I are in, the eyes are always on you, right? It's sometimes it's exhausting, right? Because they're always looking for your example, because we rise and fall with whatever permissions we have. And as soon as a leader slacks off, you can feel it in the firehouse. Everybody else is going to slack off too. That's why we built in weekends. Although we're getting busy, so now everything is kind of becoming about the training thing. So to think you can be in any kind of leadership position, whether you're doing it from the formal, like the ranked, or you're doing it from an informal position, like what Sean's doing, is foolish to think otherwise. And I think the thing that I like to look for when developing leaders is I look at what you and I do with our leadership ranks as kind of like a tool, like a Halligan bar or a nozzle, no different, right? If I give you that, then that should allow you to do things that you couldn't normally do. And I look at rank it like as a force multiplier, like you would put a cheater bar on a Halligan, or maybe you would lock two pro bars together, and then that would increase your leverage and your advantage. But if you don't know how to use the basic fundamentals of that Halligan bar, then it doesn't matter how long a cheater bar I give you, because you're still struggling with the basics. And you definitely don't need rank or title to lead. I mean, it comes from making decisions and having influence. I mean, anybody can have that in any facet of their life at any given time. And there's also the importance of bouncing back and forth between the leading role and the following role. So I think, for me as training, what has happened, because I love teaching, is that I've had to take a step back and really make a concerted effort to make sure that the folks coming up underneath are then getting that opportunity. So when I was a firefighter, my goal was to participate. Now is to create for others to participate. And that's really what I'm trying to do, is knock that down. But if you're not taking those reps to try to train right now as an informal leader, then you're definitely not going to change anything, when you become a formal leader. So many people think that if only I have this rank, I'll do this. And it's like, no, that's not what this is. Your behavior is the same. You're just going to do more of what it is you naturally do. If you naturally are out there working in career development, training the rookie how to pump a fire truck, welcome them to the firehouse, teaching them the culture of the fire service, then when I give you a badge, you're just going to do more of it. But if you're inherently selfish and about yourself, then if I give you a leadership title, you're going to change your spots all of a sudden. And I just don't find that to be the case.
Yeah, absolutely. What kind of from your perspective, Sean, what are your thoughts, opening thoughts on all this?
Mainly I would tell everybody, you don't need permission for this stuff. I'm not saying being subordinate and stuff like that, but if you have passion, you have a fire in your gut and you just want to improve the fire service, you don't need anybody's permission to do that. You can come in every day and you can share whatever it is you're excited about with the guys. You can show them how to do things, and you just keep that ball moving forward. The thing about it is, when you do that stuff, all eyes are still on you, right? Because here you are, you're coming in, you're fired up, you're doing everything like that. And that now becomes the expectation. And why I say that becomes the expectation is everybody now knows who you are, right? And they know the things that you're about and what you like to do. And, that could be positive or negative, right? So I would urge anybody to understand that whether you're an officer or you're on the front lines, down in the trenches doing those things, it's really a mindset thing, and you've got to stay focused and dedicated to it because it can beat you down if you let it. Not everybody's going to want to do the same things that you're passionate about, but that doesn't mean it doesn't have to happen. One of the things I always relate to is whenever we do like a safety brief or things like that, we always say, what if you see something, say something.
Yeah.
Well, that needs to translate into our whole day-to-day operation. If you see something needs to be fixed, say something about it. It doesn't have to be arrogant or, aggressive, but hey, I notice we've done this a couple times in a row. We need to really get better at making this more efficient. Here's a solution, whatever the case is, but you have to be consistent. You can't be that guy that's fired up today and then come to work tomorrow and just sit in the recliner all day and not keep that ball moving. People are going to adapt to whatever energy they have around them. So again, that could be positive or negative. So if you're going to go in and one day be fired up, hey, we need to do this, and then you're going to take a step backwards and not do those things, and then only want to step up when things aren't going right or you see a problem, that's not really sending a clear message. That's kind of too in between, in my opinion. Our goal every day we come into the fire service, whether you're an officer, a chief, firefighter, driver, whatever your rank is to improve what we're doing, right?
Yeah.
At crew efficiency, and it's just one of those things that you don't have to have rank to be a leader, I guess is my point. You could easily lead from the examples that you have. Everybody's experiences are different. So just be a good person, I guess, is really what it boils down to. And if you care, you care, but don't pretend to care just to get what you want and then take a back seat once it happens.
Yeah. I think, both of you mentioned this in kind of your opening thoughts is, all eyes are on you. And that's exactly the truth. And that goes for that does not know rank or experience level or anything. That goes for if you choose to be somebody that is going to stand out and stand up and share a message or teach something or just do better, try to do better and try to grow, eyes are going to be on you. If you are standing out, then all eyes are going to be on you. And that is, I don't care where you are. That's just how it is. And so you've got to be ready for that. And that's something that I know I've talked to both of you about, kind of just dealing with things in your own environments that kind of come from that idea of, you're coming with messages that were maybe counterintuitive or countercultural to where you come from. And so they may not be accepted completely. So, you're going to have to fight a little bit if that's what you want to do. If you want to share a message, if you want to try to help people grow, if you want to try to add value to people's lives, you're going to have to be okay with the eyes being on you and maybe even some eyes hoping that you'll mess up. And that's sad, but it's definitely the truth. And so we just have to be ready for that, I think. And that's a big part of all this as well, is when you are a leader or when you are somebody that wants to make the fire service better, we have to be prepared to really stand up for what we're doing. And, part of that is knowing what you're doing well, stay in your lane. If you're trying to teach something you're not comfortable with, or you're trying to preach a message that you don't really know anything about, you're setting yourself up for some pretty bad days. So really make sure that you are speaking on something that you are confident about, or that you can truly add to people's lives before you do that. And so that's kind of one of the thing. Another thing is, Sean, you said that, if you see something, do something. Basically, don't walk past a problem is kind of what you're talking about. But kind of another perspective of that is, if you know something, then teach it. If you have something that you know about, if you are good at forcible entry, teach somebody forcible entry. If you happen to come across a new technique on anything, teach it, talk about it, just run through some drills with it. We've got experience in something. We've got knowledge in something, and we need to be sharing that. And that's kind of the whole premise of all this. And lastly is the consistency you talked about, Sean. That is one thing I have learned as an officer. I've been a station officer for now almost 3 years. Consistency is the key to doing anything. If you are not consistent, you are not going to make any headway in any positive direction. You're going to have to stay consistent. And that is something that I have struggled with over and over and over again, because I don't know if it's just me personally being who I am, but when hard times come, or when negativity comes, or whatever, man, it is hard to stay consistent. Have you kind of dealt with the same thing, Benjamin?
Oh yeah, I can't tell you how many times I've said screw it. I mean, I think almost daily. I mean, almost daily, there's something that just challenges you, and it could be big. I mean, it could be huge. Like, this is something that's challenging your beliefs and your soul, and then it could be just superficial stuff that really probably doesn't matter at the end of the day. But your reaction to that stuff, people are keying in on that too. And I think the consistency piece you're speaking of is the same thing that certainty provides people, which is, if we do this, then this is the reaction or expectation or result we'll get. And everybody wants to feel competent. So if you can create training, which doesn't mean it goes perfectly. I love failing in training because I want to figure out what doesn't work for sure, rather than getting lucky. But if I can create in a way where, like, how we're going to train is consistent, like, we're going to laugh, like, at some point this is going to be easier, then it's going to get hard. And then we want people to have input. We want people to make suggestions. We want to try new things. We want to think outside the box. And then we're going to make sure we have each other's backs. Like, we're not going to go back to the firehouse and shit talk what we did there. Like, that's the goal, is to sweat together. And that sweat equity, I think, is what builds this trust. Because I need to be able to trust that, you and Sean can do your jobs in the roles that you're in. And you need to be able to trust that I can do mine. And I need you to be able to trust each other. And the only way, you'll never get that just sitting around a firehouse table talking about what you would do on stuff. You've got to go out and let the stuff hit the pavement and then see how it actually pans out. Because the thing that we've got going for us is people, but the thing that can screw this up the fastest is people. So you've got to give those people sets and reps with all that stuff.
Yeah, I think I like that approach for sure, Ben, because really what it boils down to is we have to empower people, right? That's what's after it. I don't care where you happen to be in the fire service. If there's something that you want to improve on, or something that you see needs to be fixed per se, then figure out, like, you have all the tools right there. You might have 5 or 6 guys in the firehouse, and every single one of them are good at something different, right? So give them that empowerment. If you're talking about training or just how to treat each other right, be that example. You have to be. You can't pretend to care about somebody and then, like Ben said, turn around and talk shit about them, when they're not around. And one of the biggest things that I've learned in the fire service when it comes to leadership is, if you're sitting at that kitchen table and you're engaging in that conversation where everybody's talking about somebody, make no mistake that as soon as you get up from that table, they're probably going to talk about you too, right? So how do we stop that? We stop that by letting everybody know, hey, we're human. Okay. We're going to make mistakes. Everybody does. I don't care how good you are at this job, how long you've been doing it. People mess up, and that's okay. But what did we learn from that? Right? I'm going to give you the tools to understand that, hey, failure is part of the process, right? We cannot advance to the next level until we've failed a few times, and figure out how this stuff truly works. So one of the things with empowerment, as a short example, like, we're doing hose deployments, let's say, and somebody says, hey, have you thought about this? No, I really haven't, but would you like to show me? Let them show you what they know, right? And engage them and ask them the questions like, why? Why do you do it that way? What are the benefits that you found? Now, instead of just preaching to them, like, hey, we have to be better, we've got to do it this way, you're giving them buy-in, right? You're giving them a voice on how to collectively come together and handle this situation, whatever it may be. And that's important. I think that's an aspect that a lot of people tend to forget. Usually what happens is, I don't like that. It's dumb. This is why we've been doing it this way for however long. It's worked just fine. I don't know why we're here trying to change stuff. Like, that is a toxic mindset to have. But if we can empower people, then what I found happens is there's a lot of ideas that get thrown around like, hey, last shift we worked on this, or we talked about this, or whatever. I did some more research. I found this out. Can we try it out? Or, take the tactics out of it, like the training and stuff. Let's just talk about people, right? You can't pretend to care about people if you don't truly make that drive forward. It only takes a minute. Hey man, how was your shifts? Okay, how was your days off? What'd you guys do? How's the family? Things like that. And I say this all the time. Like when it comes to leadership, you have to know your people, right? I mean, you're spending a third of your life with them. They're not just coworkers. These are actual human beings that you spend a great deal of time with. So get to know them. Get to know what makes them tick. Get to know like their behaviors. Hey, something's not right with this person, right? Now I got to figure out why. That all steps into leadership, and I only bring that up because I think when people are looking at leadership, they're thinking of like always thinking about how can I be like better to do all these things I need to do, like training and things like that. And while although training's important, I don't care how good you are on the fire ground. If you're not a people person and you can't relate to people and you can't fix those issues, then I don't want you to be a leader in my organization, because then it's only a one-sided approach. You're only doing what you want to do, and you're not learning how to help others in other areas that they probably need help in. So it's got to be a well-rounded approach. And what I found is when you invest time into other people to find out about them and all those things, in turn, like you gain that trust. And when you gain that trust, what they wind up doing is they start to emulate some of that stuff. If you watch it, they'll start talking about the same thing. So without you having to say it, hey, Duffy, how was your couple days off, man? I saw you were out here doing X, Y, and Z. Like, how was that? Was that good? Yeah. And now you're in a conversation. So that kind of takes it from always being preached at, right, to making them feel like they're part of the group. And I think that's a very important thing when we're talking about making an impact within our organization.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sitting here kind of trying to take notes as we go through this so I don't forget. And every time each of you talk, it's like I have at least one or two different directions that we can go from these. And that's exactly why I want us here and why I asked you guys to come on, because that's what I'm trying to dig into is these things that you don't read in a red book, or that you don't get from a officer one class or all that. And that's exactly what I want to share with others. And it several areas that we can get into is I think one of the main things I would like to get at some point of this conversation is, Benjamin, you kind of headed that way, is the involvement of those ranking people in training. It makes me sad to see crews that are working their butts off from the driver level down, and their officers are gone, or their officers are just hanging on the sidelines or whatever. I hate that. Another one is, Sean brought up be an example. That is huge in this topic. Well, it's huge in almost every leadership topic, but it's huge in this one. We've got to be the example if we want others to kind of get better, and that whole mindset. And you also mentioned, Sean, the empowerment. And I guess we can just kind of start there. Is one of the main things for me when I get somebody new in my crew is I want to make sure they know that I am going to challenge them to be better. And I don't care if it's a brand new firefighter fresh out of rookie school. They are going to know that I'm going to expect them to start stepping up right out of the gate. And is that going to take away from them learning how to be a firefighter when they're brand new? No. I mean, that's part of it too. And I'm not going to just hammer these people with, okay, now you're in charge of this and that. But I want them to know that I am going to challenge you to start learning how to start teaching people. You need to start learning how to share the stuff that and that's something that they need to hear, because for us, they go through a very lengthy rookie school, 20 plus weeks. So for one, they're new. So hopefully they're coming in fired up and, have a lot of excitement and drive, which I want to really tap into right off. But also they've learned things that we're either rusty on or that we haven't known. So there are things that they can teach us right out of the gate. So that's one thing that I really want to push on them is that you do have things to give. I don't care how long you've been on. I don't care where you've been on. I don't care. It just, I'm going to try to find those things and try to tap into them. What are you passionate about? What are you excited to learn more about? What do you know? All of those things. There's some great questions that leaders need to be asking. And, especially, even if you're talking kind of from the perspective of that senior firefighter, dig into these younger firefighters and find out what they enjoy about the job. Not everybody's going to like hazmat. Not everybody's going to like medical side of it. Some people are, and so if you're lucky enough to be on a crew that has a little bit of a mix of everything, then man, that right there is top notch. We've got to dig into that. For me, I've got a guy that is really passionate about special teams, hazmat, TRT, extrications, things like that. And so it would be a shame to not take advantage of that and allow them to teach us those things. And whoever else, whatever they're passionate about. And so yeah, I mean that's a good place to start right there, is just empowering those around you to step up. Because if you're somebody that says out of the gate, well, you need to shut up and you need to just listen to others and speak when you're told to speak, man, you're missing out on so much. How do you feel about that, Benjamin?
Yeah, so tying into the empowerment piece, when I hear that word, I think about leash and I think about yard. So what I look at is kind of a sliding scale of motivation, but also skill set and competency. So like take that new person that you've got, they've got probably a low to marginal skill set since they're just learning fundamentals and basics and they're probably struggling to remember those, but a high level of motivation, right? So I've got to narrow the yard that they try to operate in to keep them focused on what they need to be learning and what's most important. And I'm probably going to have them in pretty tight on the leash. I'm not going to be able to feed them like comparison. If Sean showed up on my shift, it'd be like, dude, you got this yard, this yard, this yard, this yard. And then you obviously have to feed him out some leash, some autonomy to go out and plan stuff to be able to operate in that stuff. But you never let go of it if you're the leader of the group, right? You always, it's a and it's not a control thing, it's a communication thing. If I don't realize that it's like a search line, right? If I don't realize that there's slack on it, then I got to go check on Sean or see what he needs. And it should be a constant dialogue of how can I support you in this? And then the same thing is this tracking what you want, boss? And it's like, yeah, man. And then creating opportunities for feedback from them and how it's going. And I think one of the things is depending on the person's motivation and depending on their competency, you get into the situation in which people will fall into different roles in the training. Like you might have somebody that's really good at logistics. Like, hey, I'm never going to be the guy that's going to create a lesson plan and step up and teach it. However, I'm great in the shadows. So after a guy takes a rep, like I'll share with him my personal experience and I'm the person who can secure the drill school. And like, I'll take that off of you. And then Sean can be the guy that plans and he's the face and he's the front, but I'm going to contribute behind the scenes. Like I'll have conversations with Sean about how I think it's going with the team. And it doesn't always have to be that you're in the spotlight doing that to contribute to the training. Everybody participates a little bit way. And I think if we try to force everyone to love the job and interact with this job the way we do, that we're really missing the strength of what the company offers us, which is different perspectives, different attitudes, and different skill sets. So if we don't pause to kind of take stock of that and we don't allow opportunities to breathe and for folks to say, hey, I like this or I don't like this, and then have the humility to say, yeah, no, that's a better idea, or this is a better way. And, like perfect example of that, like I took a nozzle forward class and they were messing with the Cleveland load. And I was determined that there was going to be an application for that in the fire department. And so I practiced that with the senior guy that I had for like 3 hours on a Saturday morning. He had arranged for us to go to the drill school and we were going to try it in some stairwells and see how it and it sucked. I mean, it was miserable. It wasn't going to work with our hose. We hadn't thought about how our hose floats, and so we tried it, and it didn't work, so we left it. But that was the sense of curiosity that I think is important if you ever want to be a good instructor or have training that people can buy into and feel like it adds value to their day when you do it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's
Sean, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to piggyback off Ben there. Not too long ago, you put something out there, Ben. It was talking about the farmer and the seed, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't just plant a seed and hope it grows, right? You actually have to nourish that and take care of it and do all the things that you're supposed to do for that thing to grow. And I think that's kind of the point with any leadership perspective that you look at is I can tell you 10 different times you should do something, but if I don't invest time into you to make sure that you understand it, right? And I get to know you as a person, so I know how you A, learn, or B, how you don't learn, right? Then I'm just kind of getting myself frustrated because everybody's level of learning, how quickly they pick up on things is different. Their skill sets are different, all of those things. So if you're trying to plant that seed, then, hey, you got to do that. You got to do a lot of legwork. It's going to be constant work. And one of the things I wanted to touch on is Ben said motivation, right? This is just my thought process on it. You know, Jeremy, you know Pablo. Him and I had talked about motivation pretty frequently. And our viewpoint on it is more like this, like motivation will fail you. You know, everybody, January 1 comes around, everyone's like, I'm going on a diet. I'm going to quit smoking. I'm going to eat healthier, like whatever your New Year's resolution is. And you're motivated at that point. But at some point during that process, how dedicated are you to continue, right? A lot of people fall off that wagon. And why that is because they don't have the discipline, right? So it's a two-way street. Motivation is a good starting point. That's what's going to get you fired up, but you have to stay disciplined and you have to continually nourish all those things and pour time into it and stuff, because that's what's going to make you prevail in the end, you know? So that's just kind of my take on that part of it. And like Ben said, you know, there's so many different people, you know, people from different walks of life. You never know where they came from, what their upbringing was, things like that. So I could sit 50 people down in a classroom and talk about what they should or should not do. But it's really going to boil down to, hey, what I've learned in my life may not be the same situation for you, right? So I've got to really figure this out and say, okay, what kind of background does this individual had? Maybe they had bad experiences with company officers or other firemen or things like that. Like, I have to fix that. I can't just expect them to go with the analogy of, well, I'm sorry that really happened to you, but you're here now and everything's going to be okay. Like, that's fluff, right?
Yeah.
You have to get in there and unfortunately do some damage control and say hey, that's really shitty that happened to you, that there's no excuse for that. Here's what we're going to do. Right. And you do that a step-by-step process, you know, and over time, I think what you'll find out is that people will naturally develop that leadership skill and they won't even know it because you're pouring so much of that time, effort, and energy into making this happen. When they finally get it, it's the greatest thing to watch because it's like this bulb pops in. They're like, oh my God, I can do this. It's like, yes. So be that role model, you know, just go in there and understand that your words have meaning. And although they might motivate people, that's where you need to come in with discipline and say, okay, am I tired? Did I make a lot of runs? Yes. However, there's still work to be done. And if I want any outcome for this individual, if I want us to be better collectively as a team, I'm going to have to dig deep right now and stay disciplined and focused on what the ultimate objective is. And that's for all of us to improve.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that kind of that rabbit hole that you just brought up. And it's something else that I've kind of had to learn the hard way and this is right up Benjamin's wheelhouse, is learning to deal with people. You know, things speak to me completely different than they speak to you, Sean, and you, Benjamin. Different teachers kind of click with me than you guys, and different things inspire me than you guys, and that goes across the board. And so when you do become a leader of others, doesn't matter kind of what role, if you are, you know, air quotes, leading somebody else, then you kind of got to figure out what speaks to them. You got to figure out what inspires them and how they learn, and things like that. And it goes back to what we talked about earlier, Sean, kind of learning your people and getting to know them. And that's, man, that is huge. If you don't know how to reach somebody, you're just wasting your time, and you're wasting everybody's time. And so kind of figuring out the human aspect of all this. And like I said, Benjamin, this is something that you are really passionate about and really knowledgeable about. But just figuring, just step one is figuring out that that's how it is that you're not going to go in with a cookie cutter approach and go across the board and reach and inspire everybody. It's going to take a lot of work, and it's going to take a lot of investing of everything to kind of really truly figure that out with everybody.
Yeah, one of the things that I think about is, how do you, as an instructor, lower the threshold that of energy that's required for them to gain competence? And this one size fits all, where you're teaching everyone the same way, it doesn't work.
Yeah,
people have previous experience, or they don't, or maybe that previous experience is actually hurting them because they can't adopt the way you're doing it, because they're just muscle memory and behaviorally they're tied into how their old department did it. And I've watched, I think it was 4 academies I supervised in the training section, and almost 100 recruits come through from all walks of life, all ages. And part of being, I think, a great instructor and a good leader is consistency and character, because you could say you were about something, or you could say you were credible, but by the 3rd week, those students knew. They knew who actually knew the job, and they knew who was going to be better in the didactic portions, and they knew who was really going to be solid in the hands-on. They knew who was going to be patient. They knew which instructors were going to yell at them or demean them and say stuff and all of those actions with them day in and day out ultimately influence the relationship that those recruits would have with those instructors down the stream. And I always caution them about that. You can yell at them and sound important and parade yourself around, but there's a good chance one day that not only just the cliche, they may be your boss, but they may be able to help you with something. And if you acted like a dick and you lacked consistency, because one day you were hot about the fire service, and the next all you did was malign the leadership in your department or talk about how terrible the instructor that you work with, you're just showing them your spots, right? And those are not the people that I want in my circle. Those are not the people that are going to grow me. So I'll learn from your example, and then I'll never repeat it. Like, you're going to teach me in a way that you don't want and didn't intend. But like you said, the all eyes on you thing. So that consistency piece, which goes back to kind of the certainty, like when people know that, they'll be willing to operate in it, and they'll try harder. And then just always looking for why it's not working and trying to figure out how it might be better is really important. There's a story that I don't know how widely circulated it is, and I'll never tell it fully, but Jeff Shoup's a friend, and he talked to me about a FDIC hot class that his group did. And I think this was like the early mid 2000s, if my timeline's right. And there was a student there in this 4-hour hot class that had some questions about the 2.5 and had this opportunity to work with Jeff, and, wanted to stay after. And I mean, if you've been out to FDIC, you know that like it's a business out there, right? You got to get these students to and from, there's logistics challenges. And so there's a lot of hustle. And sometimes that can make it hard to really connect with these instructors, these folks that you paid extra money to go see, time away from your family, all that stuff. And so Jeff takes the time, he recognizes this guy's passion, he works with him, and however long it was, I think it was like an hour, maybe a little bit longer, he invests in this guy. And then, a few years goes by, and someone reaches out to Jeff and it's like, hey, this kid that says you stayed after and helped him, with this 2.5, and he wants to connect with you and kind of thank you for it. It ends up being Aaron Fields. It's like, holy hell, right? Think about the idea that if Jeff had rebuffed him and gone, no, that I'm not getting paid for it, or it's not my role, or no, I don't have time for you. Like, what a disservice that would have been, and what example that that would,
Yeah.
an influence I had on a guy like Aaron, who's had probably, I mean, one of the largest footprints and most credibility of any instructor I've ever seen, and is phenomenal at that stuff. And so that, like, we have the gift of Aaron, you know, not just because of Jeff, but certainly it was impacted by Jeff. And that's the potential in every freaking student. And you don't always know who those guys and girls are. So it's like you treat everybody as if they could be a future rock star, and then they'll figure it out as they go in and as life happens to them. You know, it's when Sean brought up the thing about the farmer, you know, where you plant the seed and then it takes your labor and your effort. You don't just sit around and curse the weather and say, this is why you're failing. There's going to be weeds in that garden, right? And some of the weeds are indifference and complacency, and others. And some of the weeds are the bad days that you have with you, where you drag something to work that's going on at home, or you're not getting the traction you think on an idea or on a committee, or just you're not even seeing the results that you had hoped for. You're just having a bad day, and pulling those weeds and then getting back in is probably one of the most important role model leadership behaviors we can have. Because I was talking with Todd Edwards about the leadership development or lack thereof. And I told him, I'm like, it really boils down to two things. And this could be the same, I think, for instructors. Our organizations fail when we don't prepare you to win and we don't prepare you to lose, right? When you win as an instructor and when you win as a leader, it's because others are showing success. Like, our success in these moments, our feelings of success are result of their work, their good work, right? And so if we don't teach that, then the ego gets involved, right? And then you start taking a student not picking up a skill personally, or you take the success of the team on the fire ground and like you run with it and you're bragging about yourself. And it's like, that wasn't what the point is. And you got to take the ego away from it and base it in the team, because then there's the flip side of it. Like, when shit doesn't go right, when you fail, and if you're preaching it's 100% the result of your input and your effort, then that failure is 100% of yours, which is rarely the case, right? There's always some kind of factors that you have to look into.
Yeah.
But if you don't have any kind of resiliency or coping mechanisms, and understand that loving this job 110% is going to put you in the ground early, because you just, as much as we preach it, you just can't do it. You've got to have rest built into that, and some downtime for reflection more than anything. Like, you got to have periods of incubation where you set something in motion and you're thinking about and watching the results of it. And if you're constantly on top of it, changing it, manipulating it, then one, it's going to exhaust people, but two, you're not going to be able to attend to it properly, and you're going to exhaust yourself and flake out. And that's why so many great people, when they assume one more extra thing, like say it's a formal leadership role, they just burn out, you know, because it's too much. And they didn't learn about pace, like training for a marathon, where you're not running 26.2 miles every day. You're being micro ambitious, right? And you're building a little bit more each time on that. And that's true for whether you're leading or whether you're an instructor, whether it's a fire ground or whether you're creating a lesson plan for how you can teach somebody how to do a search or force a door. Is you've got to take stock of what you have and kind of breathe around it and look for opportunities to make change, and then celebrate it when it's going right, and allow people to enjoy what that feels like before rushing to the next one, which so often we do, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's awesome. You got anything to add before I jump on that, Sean?
I don't know if I can follow that. That was pretty good. The only thing I say is, like, obviously, you know, I do build your culture. You do crew first culture. Benjamin does some stuff on culture too. And this conversation, I love this conversation because culture means so many different things to different people, right? But I think that we can come to a common ground. And I read a book by Eggert H. Sheen not that long ago, and I found his definition of culture right on point with what Ben is and you are talking about. And pretty much what he says is, what we call culture is usually the result of what a founder or leader has imposed on a group that has worked out and created buy-in, right? So that's it right there. Like, we have to find out what works and what doesn't. We have to create that buy-in. Otherwise, if we're not doing those things, whatever culture we might want to see within our organization, it may never get there, right? Because we're not cultivating that. We're not getting out there and making sure that all that's happening. And I think that's huge. You know, you could be the best firefighter out there, best company officer, best instructor, anything like that. But if you don't know how to handle the cultural aspects of your organization, that's going to be a huge hurdle for you to get over.
Yeah.
Right? Because although, right, in that definition, it said what a leader has imposed on a group that has generally worked out very well, that could also be a negative. Like, we have to understand that in our fire service, there are people that fight for a negative culture because of their complacency and their comfortability in that, and they don't want to change. They're perfectly happy with where they are. And then you have a large number of people that are like, hey, this is not okay, right? Why is this has gone on way too long and it needs to be fixed. Now you're trying to implement that culture and create buy-in, and hopefully things will work. But man, don't get discouraged. Like, the biggest thing is you're all passionate. Everybody's passionate. We want to reach and get a hold of as many people as possible. And that is our goal. But let's be realist for a second and understand that there are just some people you're not going to reach, right? There are some people that doesn't matter what you pour into them, what you do. They don't care. They're disengaged. They're completely content with where they're at. I would urge everybody not to write those people off, right? Although there may be nothing that we can do directly right then and there, and they may not want to change. The worst thing we can do is single them out and be like, don't be like this guy, or that guy's a shitbag, or, be aggressive with them either, because that is also counterproductive, right? You're trying to foster this environment of positivity and growth and, hey, we're all in this thing together. Look, I look at it like this. You don't get to pick your family. I've got people in my family that they need a lot of work. You know what I mean? But that doesn't mean that I don't love them and that I wouldn't be there for them and I wouldn't do everything in my power to make sure that they're successful and things like that. So those people may not come back to you immediately and say, hey, thank you. It may be several years after they retire or whatever. But eventually, like, they're still looking at you and what you're doing, and they're looking at the situation around them. And if they choose not to be a part of it, there's still that aspect of when they step away, they could look back and be like, you know what? I may not have agreed with everything that person did, but he was one hell of a leader. He made sure to do right by everybody. And hindsight, it made this place better to work. What I have found is when you get involved with all that negativity and those people that are just not for this anymore, and they're just kind of retired on active duty, just buying time, that starts to be toxic to you, because you're allowing yourself to open that door where you take on that energy as well. Hey, be the same, treat them the same that you're treating everybody else. And you know what? The end result is going to be what it is. But I like to think that at least they know that they're respected. And that's where we're falling short, in my opinion, with leadership, is that we have forgotten how to respect people if they don't believe what we believe or they don't do what we do. Right. Yeah. And that's a huge problem for me, because I don't want everybody to be like me. If everybody was like me, then what am I going to learn? Right. How am I going to continually grow? So it's okay to be different, and just as fired up as we are as leaders, we have an obligation not to let our personal feelings about issues get in the way of what the mission is.
Yeah, for sure. Now, to go back to the Shoop and Field story that you shared, Benjamin, because honestly, I got chills while you were telling me that, and because that is exactly why I'm here right now with you all. And I've said it over and over and over again, and I'll say it again though, but if you choose to not share your message, or you choose not to share your experience or anything, your failures, whatever it is, if you choose not to share those things, then I guarantee you the number of people that you will impact is zero. That is a guarantee. There is no question about that. But if you do choose to share those things, the lessons that you've learned, the failures you've made, the things that you have gained through experience, if you choose to share those, then the number of people that you could possibly impact is just exponential. There's no way to ever quantify that, because you don't know, especially if you're putting yourself out there beyond the walls of your firehouse and your fire department. If you're going outside of that, like what we're doing right now. I mean, the you could literally touch people across the world with this message or with your experiences and all that. And to me, that is so powerful. And to hear a story that is, firsthand accounts of exactly that happening, that is so big. And I love that idea, and I love hearing things about that, because that's exactly why I want to be doing these things, is because, man, there are so many great people out there that have learned so many important lessons and that have gained so much invaluable experience. And it's a shame when those people go away, retire or kind of step away from the fire service and take it all with them. It's a shame. And it's sad that that happens, but it happens every day. And so that's kind of the challenge I want to put out there, is be the person that steps up and share what you have, and whatever that is, share it. And I love that story, Benjamin. That's awesome. And Sean, you talked about, kind of creating that culture, and that's another reason for this underground movement is, what book tells you how to be somebody that comes into a negative culture or a crappy culture and start from the ground up to create a new one? Where do you learn that from? Because I didn't learn that until I had to do it myself. And it's taken me several years of mistakes to kind of finally feel like I'm starting to gain some ground. And that's exactly why I want to be doing this. I want us to kind of pass on these things. And because I've been that person that came into a negative culture, an environment that nobody wanted to be at. And I knew that almost everything had to change, but I didn't know how to do it. And so, that consistency that you both have talked about several times over and over and over again, that has been the key to the successes I've had. And that has been the key to the failures I've had. Like we talked about earlier, and you kind of admitted the same thing, Benjamin, is especially last year, the year of COVID and everything that else that came with it. Man, I have been on quite a roller coaster of getting fired up and knowing where I wanted to be and where I wanted to bring us, and willing to go there. And then something just hits you and it just like sucks the life out of you, and you're back down in the valley, and you get ramped up again, and you're heading back up, and here we go, and it's just up and down. And it's just that consistency of if we're truly wanting these things, then we have to maintain that fight. And yeah, we're not going to have it every day. You're not going to be able to maintain that drive and that positivity and all those good things. You're not going to be able to have it every day, but just getting back in that fight as soon as you can and minimizing those valleys as quickly as possible. That's kind of the premise behind just getting to where you want to go. If that's where you want to be, then you got to get back on as soon as you can, because you're going to get knocked down. But getting back in there as quick as you can, and fighting some more is with all you got.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and one of the things I was going to jump in on when Sean was talking about treating people with respect, and I think it's important to maintain people's dignity. If you're attacking them in a way in which that feels threatened, then you never stood a chance of being effective. And the senior man or woman is a perfect example of this. You look at a lot of folks in that range of 15 to 25 or 30 years on, and you ask them, how valued do you feel? And a lot of them will tell you, not at all, right? Because maybe they're not the most current on stuff. So they do a great job on the fire ground or in the firehouse, but they're not really asked to do things that can have large scale organizational changes, because they're not the up and comers or the rising stars. And those people are the ones that they tend to feed that kind of stuff to. But I think it's important to notice that they offer a tremendous amount of value. There's a difference between having a rock star and then having someone that can serve as kind of an anchor, or like a rising star. Well, rising star versus rock star, right? Like the rising star is like this meteoric rise, and they're going to be hungry for stuff. And they're in a season where it's spring and summer and everything's bright and wonderful, and they're all in all the time. And then a rock star is like someone that provides you stability, because those rising stars are going to be moving in and out of roles and responsibilities. They're going to be trying to affect the cultural change you guys are talking about, but they're not going to be around long enough for that, because we're not talking about changing culture in weeks or months. We're talking about years or a decade, depending on how big the problem is. So if you only focus on the rising stars and you don't focus on those rock stars, you're missing like the majority of the fire service, and you're missing the folks that have a lot to offer. So just because someone won't go to FDIC or doesn't have a fire department t-shirt that they wear off duty doesn't mean they don't offer a tremendous amount of value to you and your team and leadership, right? They can do a lot. And that's kind of like, you know, you got to love it how I love it. It's such a mistake. Just because you're in a spring season doesn't mean that they can't be in a winter, right? Where, you know, they're done growing and they're just going to maintain and they're focused on, you know, getting their finances in order and maybe losing some weight and going into retirement. And don't disengage those folks. And they'll, people can read you pretty quickly. Like you'll say one thing like, oh, you're a valuable member of this team, but they've already picked up on the fact that you don't think that. And then once that's known and once it starts to affect, you know, their ability to have dignity and competency at work, you're going to lose them, and you're never going to be effective as an instructor or as a leader at that point.
Yeah, I think that's a great piece of all this is hopefully you are somebody that has that passion and you know, have that drive of wanting to make people better and wanting to have a growth mindset. But it's really tricky to be able to use that in a positive way without turning people off. You know, you could be somebody that is passionate about this and just so much in everybody's face about it that nobody wants to be involved in. You know, you've got those fence riders that is a huge part of the fire service, you know, that middle of the ground people that aren't really fired up, they're not really checked out, they're just kind of, they're there, but they can be reached. And we've got to figure out a way to reach them and truly inspire them without just, you know, overwhelming them with that passion. And because nobody wants that, you know, especially if you're not somebody that completely shares that at that point. If we're so overwhelming and just in your face with it, you know, you're going to lose those people before you even have a chance to kind of bring them over that hump.
Yeah, Jeremy, that's a good point there. And one of the things I always relate that exact thing to is we've all been driving down the street and we see that person that's just like way extreme. Like they have that sign, right? It says like, Jesus is coming, repent, you know, and like, they're just scary in their approach, right? Cause they're just like, bam, right in your face. And they're just screaming and you're like, man, this guy's nuts. Right. Yeah. However, I have met other people who are very religious who don't have that approach and they actually have more of a calming effect and you listen to it. Although it might be the same message, the delivery is wrong. And that's what we have to understand too is, you know, our passion could be blinding. It really can, you know, because we're so fired up and hungry about it. And all we want is others to have that same drive and motivation. That's just not real. Like, it's just not real. That's not the case. So, you know, I've been turned off by a lot of things by its approach. And when I started teaching and doing things like that, I vowed that like, hey, okay, I'm not going to be that guy because I know the negative impact it had on me. And I probably missed something of value because I shut myself off from it, you know? So the other thing is you were talking about the culture coming from, you know, like a place that has like a negative culture and stuff. And I had to experience that for a short time myself. And what I realized is it's real simple. You either currently have a certain type of culture, right? And then you either want to be a certain type of culture or you're in the process of becoming that, right? So we have to like take the blinders off and look at this broad approach and say, okay, hey, listen, this is currently what I have. This is what I want to become. What's the best way to achieve that, right? And if we can't do that, then I think, again, we're just going to continuously fail because we're not looking at long term. You know, Ben kind of mentioned it. This is not overnight. You know, you may not ever really even see the true effect of what you're doing until you're close to being retired, right? I mean, that's hopefully you'll see it sooner, but man, I'll take it this way. Pablo and I worked in a department where, we always got mocked for wearing our bunker gear while we were training, right?
Mhm.
Oh, that's dangerous. You're wearing yourself out, blah, 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 blah. And we didn't let that impact us. We're like, whatever, you do you, I'll do me. And neither one of us are in that organization anymore. But the people I know and looking at what they put on social media, that's all those guys are doing is working out in bunker gear and like getting after it. And it's awesome to see, although I would like to think that like maybe we had a small part in that, we can't take the credit for that. What it is that people were out there and they were watching, right? And they saw that, hey, you know what? They didn't let this get them down. And it's important that we do all these things. So it just took a couple more motivated individuals to get up and say, hey, we're going to do this and stay focused and disciplined on that. Man, they're impacting change at a level that I never saw when I was in that organization. And it's awesome. And that's the whole point. Like, you've got to understand that when you feel like you're not making any headway, you truly are, and when you take a step back from that and you just observe and watch what's going on, you'll be pretty impressed with the impact you're able to have on somebody or multiple people, as long as you're not a dick about it. You know what I mean? So I want to get on that tangent because I felt like it was worth bringing up after what you both have said. That's really all I got to say about
Oh yeah, I mean, and that's that's what we're trying to achieve right there is just trying to reach as many people as we can, doing it in the best way that we can. And like we talked about earlier, no, you're not going to reach everybody, and no, your style is not going to be productive as productive as maybe somebody else's style, but we need to do the best we can. And that kind of leads into what I mentioned earlier that I definitely want to get into during this conversation is just the involvement at all levels of training and all these things, not just firefighters. And like I said earlier, it makes me sad when I see crews getting after it, except the actual formal leadership of those crews. Or if you have, company training and there's no chief level anybody inside. And that's kind of something I've experienced for quite a while now. That's the culture of my organization, is that our battalion chief just they're not involved in anything. They're not even really there when we're doing things together. And so it makes you wonder, and I think you kind of touched on it some, Benjamin, is what do they know about us? You are at a position that you need to know what me and my crew are good at. You need to know what me and my crew are not great at. You need to know what you can trust us with. But if you aren't out there at least observing, then what do you know about us? And so that's been something that's really kind of a hang up with me. And man, when I have seen going to these conferences and you see captains and you see battalion chiefs and even some fire chiefs out involving themselves in these things, man, it makes me feel really good. And I try to reach out to these people when I see them and tell them how much I appreciate it, because you just don't see it that much. And I wish it was more prevalent, but I feel like that is something that is really, it needs to be better with the fire services. We need to maintain that. And it goes back to something else that you all have talked about, is just that trust and that closeness that builds, the respect that it builds with your crews when they see you out there putting that work in and putting that sweat in, as you said, Benjamin. That's not just gaining skill and gaining, confidence in what you're doing personally. It is a whole huge picture that you're building, and that is a huge piece of this culture. If we're talking about kind of creating a positive culture change, if you're doing it, if you're trying to do it and not involving yourself in all these things, it's going to be a long road, as opposed to somebody that is involving themselves in as many aspects of this as they can from that leadership perspective.
Yeah, so when I was in the training section, I had a few different chiefs in a short period of time. It was kind of a revolving door. It was really interesting. And I had one chief who was never there. He was working on his master's degree and he was teaching IMT stuff. And so he was very busy and he had some personal stuff. So just wasn't very present. And that was, that was his style, not what he wanted to do, but just kind of how life had dealt its hand to him at the moment. And then the gentleman that replaced him, this guy, is older. He's got like 35 going on 40 years of service in the fire service. And every time I saw his car, I couldn't find him. And I'd end up finding him turned out in his gear in the burn building with the recruits. Like, not if there's a chance to teach, he'd teach, but otherwise he was there just supporting the instructors. And whatever we wore, he matched us so that he would experience the conditions that we were. And that was a big pet peeve for me, where we saw this a lot in Mayday, where you'd get these outside instructors come in, these hoo-ha bravado guys, and they would work the piss out of the recruits in 110-degree heat index with all these, drills, and they'd complain about how soft they were. But meanwhile, they're standing in a t-shirt and not even a helmet on, and they're not giving them any rest. I'm like, you're not taking a bite of the shit sandwich. So don't tell me about why they're not liking what they're tasting. And then after that chief, I had a chief who he'd come by and he sat in his car, but he wouldn't even park his car like in front of the building. He'd park it around the side. And so I gave him the feedback. I'm like, dude, it looks like you're spying on us. Like, it looks like you're trying to catch us do the wrong thing here. And you're not celebrating what we're doing right. And on the heels of the gentleman that was there before him, like being visible and doing all this stuff, it really put a taste in my mouth. I was like, man, it's funny how people approach their roles differently. And now there's one there that's doing a great job and he works out with them, but he doesn't lead the training. So like, how they interact with their role is different, and they all have different effects on that stuff. And the one thing that I've tried to I tell rookies this classically, I'm like, you won't know truly how you have felt about our time together, about me as an instructor, me as a leader, until you are with your next officer. Like, once you have had a chance for another person to do the same thing I'm trying to do, and you see the different way they do it, you'll figure out whether I'm good or bad at my job, which I think is why I always hoped when I got replaced, I didn't want anybody to thwart the success that we had experienced, but also, like, it was like when a great guy came in, it was, damn, he is better than me. Like, those guys they're not going to really appreciate our time. But to your point, like when you're talking about culture, this thing's a relay race, right? And there's a beginning and then there's an end and there's legs in between. Like that second and third runner, like, they're not ever going to be the moment really that defines that relay race. A lot of times it's the finish is what we focus on, but that start is so pivotal because we don't have a finish without that start. And likewise, you've got to be in a position where you can pass off that baton to someone else for a different leg. And to rehash what we've been talking about, if you're the person who has the leadership style or the instructor style that nobody wants to be around you, there will not be anyone waiting to run that next leg of the race. And what misery that is, to think about all the labor, all the training you've done, and then you go to pass it off and there's nobody there to receive it. And so, it's equal opposite reaction. I'm so curious, and I just spend way too much time rethinking through situations about how could I've done things differently and created different outcomes. But I'm always thinking about those training chiefs and how their approaches were so different and their impact was so different. And yet the feelings they created in the staff and in the instructors, and in the recruits, and the relationships they developed that then, carried out into the field, how different they were as a result of the decisions they made and how they conducted themselves.
Yeah, for sure. That, and that's a great way to just exactly kind of sum up kind of my thinking on that is, so just speaking personally, I'm, as I keep saying, I'm a station officer, so I shouldn't be the best firefighter on my crew. I hope not, but that doesn't mean that I can't be involved in something. Does it mean that I have to teach everything because, I'm that formal leader? No. Does it mean that I can't involve myself in it? Absolutely not. But I want to do, there's several ways of thinking behind this for me. And I'll just get into it real quick is, for one, like we talked about, I want to be involved in that just to build that respect, just to build that closeness and relationship. But also, I want to learn these things so that I can teach them. being a captain doesn't mean that I can't teach somebody firefighting things. Being a captain doesn't mean that I can't teach somebody driving things. I want to be involved in those things, not for a power aspect or a micromanagement aspect, but I don't want to rely on other people to do it. You know, if I get into a situation where, say, one day all my senior people are gone and I just got a bunch of newer people, well, that probably means that maybe I need to step up that day and teach something. And if I haven't prepared myself for that, I got nothing to give. And so that's kind of another way for that I look at that stuff too, is I can't sit here and want to teach others things if I'm not out there learning them every day myself. And so, yeah, I have so much more respect for the informal leaders that are involved in training and teaching and sharing experience, or the captains that involve themselves in the cruise training and all that, and the everybody, if they're involved in all these things, I have so much more respect for that. And that's human nature. If you're somebody that sits on the sidelines while your people work, and I guarantee you I have worked for that person, and I had nothing for those people from that role. I had nothing for them because, man, that sucks. And so I've seen that and experienced that myself, so I know how that feels.
Yeah, Jeremy, it's for me, it's whatever you believe in, you got to live, right? You have to. And how many times have we heard the because I said so, right?
Mhm.
Asking why isn't a bad thing, but people hate being asked why, right?
Yeah.
It's always because I said so. I tell you right now, like, I don't trust anybody who's not willing to get their hands dirty. If you're telling me to do something and you can't physically show me that you're capable of doing it yourself, then there's just no buy-in for me. And that
Yep.
might sound terrible, but it's the truth. Like, when I look at who I look at as leaders in my organization or in the fire service, I'm looking at people that I want to emulate, people that I can look at and be like, you know what, this person truly lives it. You know, they're telling me to get out there and that I got to do air consumption drills because, I got to conserve my air. Well, you could talk about it all day long, but if you're not showing me how to do that and you're not in gear with me right next to me, like going through these processes, or you're not next to me making sure that I truly understand what it is you're asking me to do, then eventually I'm going to stop caring. I just be like, okay, well, whatever. This person's always telling me to do it, but they're never doing it. Right. And then
Mhm.
what happens? You get that negative context associated with it. And you actually wind up going backwards instead of going forwards, so we have to understand that we become whatever we accept, right? So if you're okay with that as a leader of, hey, pointing the finger and saying, hey, do what I said, because, that's what I'm telling you to do, but you're not willing to get down there and show people and do all those other things, then don't come back later and ask yourself why there's so many issues in your department, right? And it's just with that whole context of things, anybody in an organization has the ability to be a leader, really, right? It doesn't matter what your rank is. The probationary firefighter who comes in, right? Man, I've learned so much stuff from new people. And, one of the things that I've learned along the way is that I always like to bring it back to the tortoise and the hare. You have people in the organization that are really, really good at what they do, but they're arrogant, right? And
Mhm.
it's all about them and they don't care, and the tortoise and the hare thing comes up with like, what, there's a race there, right? There's a defined finish line that you have to get to. Here you have the hare that's really fast. He's overly cocky, knew that he was probably going to win that race. So what did he do? He took a nap, right? He stopped. He's like, I got this in the bag. I'm going to just stop right here. I'm going to take a nap. And during that napping phase, what happened? That tortoise passed him right up and just kept going. That's what we need to strive for. We need to strive to be that tortoise of like always making sure that, we're taking in everything and we're moving, even if it's inches, right? We don't, and that's the thing. This doesn't have to be incredibly fast, right? A nice steady pace will win the race. And I always want to be the tortoise in any situation. I want to be the one that has like people are looking at me like not a chance, dude, because I'm going to prove you wrong. And in that process of proving me wrong, I'm going to make everybody else realize what they're capable of doing too, so that we do what? We move to that defined finish line. I'm not interested in developing leaders who are only about themselves and what they can get out of the situation. I'm interested in developing leaders who are motivated and driven for a team dynamic, and if I need help with something, I want the person who's a subject matter expert per se to help me. I don't want them to laugh at me and criticize me because I'm not up to where they feel I should be, and that's really the whole thing in and out of the firehouse is human nature can be pretty raw, right? The way that we choose to approach things. And I think we need to bring it down a little bit and realize like that our actions and our words and everything else, whether they're spoken or not, have a direct impact on everybody in that firehouse, right? So yeah, that's pretty much it. Like with the culture and the training stuff. And like Benjamin said, I want to make sure that at the end of this, right, that people are paying attention and ready to pass that torch. Because if we put all this time and energy into something and we're not really developing that, to me, it's wasted, right? Like you've wasted a career. And there's this motivational video on YouTube. Somebody from FDNY did it. I was talking about like, what did you do in your day, right? In your prime, when you were young and old and fast and all that stuff. And then he goes to say like, you could tell somebody you're a New York City fireman. And then when the page is turned and the day is done, that'll be enough. I don't find that to be true, because we could show up to work day in and day out and whatever, and we could say, oh, I work for this place, and that's all great. But what did you do with the time you had while you were there, right? Aside of developing yourself, did you develop others? Did you leave it better than you found it? Like all of those things are important aspects when we talk about leadership development and moving forward into the next generation.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the whole getting back to that impact. We can choose to kind of drift off into the sunrise and take everything with us that we gained and do nobody any good, or we can choose to use those things to make an impact in people's lives. And yeah, we're kind of one of the goals is to make the fire service better, make our crews better, make our departments better. But really at the end of the day, we also have the ability to make other people's lives better, just in general, just making people better people and helping each other along that path. And yeah, you can't say that enough. I think that we've really hit on so many different areas, and that's exactly what I wanted to get out of today, is just the importance of those of us that choose to be leaders, those of us that want to be leaders in formal, informal, whatever role that is. We really have to look at the weight of what that means. And part of that weight is that we need to share the knowledge and experience that we've gained with others and really try to build up tomorrow's leaders below us. And so that's kind of the mindset behind all this. And kind of wrapping it up, Benjamin, you have anything else to kind of peel off on, or conclusion that you want to wrap it up with?
Yeah, I think the kind of touching up on what Sean just mentioned and just kind of wrapping up what we've been talking about is I got confused early in my career, and probably wasn't until maybe the last 6 or 7 years that I've really started to understand this, that there's a difference between leaving a legacy and having impact. And, we want to be the one crossing the finish line, and we want to have impact in our organizations. And that's exactly what we should be striving for, is impact in the organizations and leaving a legacy at home. And I think sometimes I hear like, what's your legacy? What's your legacy at work? And it's like, that organization's not going to remember you. Like
Yeah.
I can look back 30 years at some of the largest organizational changes we had, like when we took on EMS. And I know those guys and girls were killing themselves to make that happen. I do not know their names,
Yeah.
but their kids do, and so trying to leave a legacy at work, and which is going to require sacrifice, it is a slippery slope where I would choose to focus on having impact, which is me colliding around with ideas and beliefs and shaping them and molding them and leaving it different, hopefully better, but different than what I found. And I think that occurs in the moments we have with people, like the organization might not remember me, but that rookie is going to remember me as his first officer or that first instructor. And I'll be with them, for forever. And the influence that could potentially have, like what we talked about with Shoup and Aaron Fields, is infinite as it ripples across. Legacy is a gift. It's an inheritance of something. And I'm going to leave that to my kids, like people who will always appreciate that, and their grandkids. And being into this job as much as we are is a trap at times, because it can pull you away from the things that matter the most. And I offer that just because I think it's important, if you're going to have a conversation about all in passion, that you need to understand that is at home first. And then, like, when things are going well at home, that's when you can have the summer season or the spring season and go all in at work. But if it's a dumpster fire at home and you're not taking care of your priorities there, then like it's hard for me to respect somebody that is not managing that and coming to work and telling me how much I need to sacrifice at work. It's like, nah, I really feel like you've got it backwards. So again, just focus on having impact at work and do it with the people that you work with, and then focus on leaving a legacy at home. And you'll be so much more fulfilled by that, I believe, because you're going to get rewarded immediately at home, because that feedback is instant and forever. And then eventually you'll maybe start to see some feedback through the stories that people tell you about the impacts you had. And those are the feel good moments. And it may take a while for them to come, and they may not come till after your career's gone, but they're happening. And you just have to trust and have faith that, if you're a good person and you're doing it for the right reasons, that those moments are happening, whether you're getting that feedback or not.
That's awesome. And I love that statement right there. And that's a great way to kind of wrap it all up, is, with that family aspect, it's gotta be number one. And hopefully, hopefully it is. And I know both of you are big family people as I am. And that's part of why I do this stuff, not only to be a better leader and better whatever at work, but use as much of that I learn to bring it home and hopefully be better at home as well. So I love it. What do you got, Sean?
Yeah, I'm just gonna pretty much piggyback off what the both of you have said. Is understand that we are all temporary employees, every single one of us. At some point we're going to leave, and we're going to move on with the next chapter of our life, and so is our organization. So there's this buzz term in the fire service right now, them, right? And I agree with it, but we have to also remember that term encompasses our family at home, right? We can be as good as we want for the guys at work, but if you can't come home, right, to a loving family and things like that, then you got to ask yourself, was it worth it? Right? Because my biggest support system is my wife and kids. I cannot do any of the things that I do without them. Right? So if I'm always busy trying to take care of everybody else, but I neglect them, what happens when I walk in the door and my house is empty and they're not there because I wasn't focused on being the best I could for them either? So like Benjamin said, I think that's where we have to start, like being really good at home, right? Being a good role model at home and taking care of that, and then taking that into the workplace, right? And truly living what you believe, like I said a few minutes ago, because at the end of the day, I would hope that we all reach retirement, right? And you could have the approach to where you're going to coast through your career, and that's going to be good enough because it was good enough for the city or the municipality you worked for. You could be all in, where you're just like totally consumed by it, which I would caution as well, because that could be dangerous. You got to find that balance. You really do. And just about anything that we do in the firehouse could be translated into our home lives, right? Like anybody who's got children knows that like firefighters are just overgrown children. That's all we are, right? We have the same issues with like trying to get people to follow directions and all that other stuff. if you're a shitty person at home, you're going to be a shitty person in the firehouse because you can only fake something for so long, right? Before your true colors start coming out. So I would urge everybody who's passionate about the job and everything else to ask themselves, like, hey, am I putting just as much time, effort, and energy to my home life with the ones that are going to be here with me long after I retire from the fire service? Am I focused on them as much as I'm focused on impacting this change? Because you go too far in one direction, guess what's happening at home? All the things you're fighting for in your firehouse, you're losing everything you had before you were even a fireman, right?
Yeah.
So just find that balance and understand that, like, it's okay to take a step back every once in a while and say, I need some breathing room. I need time to process all this. Like Benjamin said, I need time to like regroup and maybe I need to shift focus, right? Maybe I've done everything I could and I gave all these people the tools that they needed, and now it's up to them. It's time that I focus more on other issues that also impact my life, because if I'm not good for my family at home, I'm not good to anybody. So that's what I would urge everybody to think of is, you really want to develop your leadership skills, start right in your own household, because that's where it's going to really matter.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I couldn't have planned a conclusion better than that for both of you. Like I said, I'm big family, and I love how everything kind of brings it back to that, and you guys wrapping it up in that way is awesome. And like you said, Sean, the for them thing, and that's me. My for them is for my family, for my citizens, and for my crew. That's for them. It's not just a one-sided thing. It's a total package. And so I love it. Definitely want to give you guys a chance to tell everybody out there, if you got stuff coming up. Benjamin, I know you got a conference coming up here pretty quick, and whatever else you guys want to plug before we let go.
So yeah, for my part, I've got a few more gigs on the road before the year wraps up. And then one of the things that I love doing most then is getting to play host to some of my friends and bring them into Virginia. So we've got the Central Virginia Fireground Commander Conference coming up October 25th through the 27th. So still a few spots left for that. That and all the stuff we've been talking about, the podcasts and the blogs and just the thoughts on leadership in life. You can find all information, all that on the embraceresistance.com website, and then the Embrace Resistance Facebook page.
Good deal. Sean, what do you got?
For me, I've actually tried to slow it down a bit because it was becoming too time consuming. And, I just talked about family. So, they're awesome. They get it and they let me do the things that I need to do. But I've kind of tried to limit it to like maybe 1 or 2 things a month, and that's it, so that I can put priorities with my wife and kids. So, like I said, we just got done with Firehouse Expo. Next month, we'll be going to Corning, New York, and doing a class there with Fire Nuggets. That'll be like through the 15th through the 18th. Got a couple other things coming up in November. In Ohio, we got a 5,000 square foot acquired structure. So we're going to be doing some engine and truck work in that. Also, Todd Shepard with his Fortune Fire Doors. He's got his own training in West Licking. So we'll be doing that too. And going into November, got a class in Arkansas. It's called First In. Lots of truck and engine stuff. So keeping pretty busy for the rest of the year. Already filling up pretty quickly for next year. There's one thing that I am working on for next year. I'll take this opportunity for a shameless plug.
Oh yeah.
Todd Edwards and myself, with another gentleman here in Michigan, we are making a fire conference for the state of Michigan. It's going to be called Great Lakes Hot, and it's 3 days. First day of lectures, and then more truck and engine style stuff. So hopefully that takes off. You got North Florida Fire Expo in March, which is going to be awesome. If anybody hasn't seen that yet, there's a great list of people that are going to be there. So, just trying to stay busy there. If anybody needs to reach out to me, they can do so on my personal Facebook page or the Build Your Culture Facebook page. That's pretty much what we operate with now. just because I'm not real tech savvy. So doing a website for me is kind of like, I don't know, uncharted territory. So I just haven't really done that yet. But
Gotcha.
yeah, just, just trying to keep pushing that needle forward a little bit every time we get out there and, empower people to hopefully do the same. And that's really where I want to end with it is it's not about me or you or Ben, and it never should be. It's really about what are we doing to try and improve upon situations where we feel need to be improved, right?
Yep.
So my hope is that all of us, while we're out there, can reach people and kind of get that spark started for them to hopefully do the same thing, because everybody has value. And I just want to bring that. I hope to be a student in their class one day, and just give them the tools they need to move forward because, I've been at this almost 17 years now. I'm not going to be doing it forever, but there's one thing that I do want, and I want to step back when I am finished with my career and look at all the people that are still carrying the message forward and doing great things because it matters.
Yep.
So if that is you, you don't know where to start, reach out to somebody, find a way, get your passion going, get out there, make an impact. And that could be small. That could be just within your own organization. It could be locally or regionally, or it could even be nationally. Whatever pathway you choose to take, would urge everybody, if this is something you're passionate about and this is something you want to do, then do it. Right? Get going, find those mentors and pick their brains, and man, just this is your time. Make it worth it.
Absolutely. It's a great way to end it. And I got nothing better to say than that. So with that being said, thank you all for listening. I really appreciate it. Hopefully we got something out of this that can add a little bit of value to your life and to your career and home life. But thank you guys very much for your time. I really, really appreciate it and appreciate your friendship and everything that you all are doing for the fire service. So thank you for coming.
Thanks for the opportunity, Jeremy.
You're welcome. That being said, we will talk to you next time. And as always, stay humble and do work. Thank you.